Hi everyone, welcome to the first video in our creativity series. This is something that I'm really excited and passionate about, as Voice is a creative outlet and we have loads of creative people who are involved in Voice projects, but the reality is that almost anything can be creative. And so because of this, we want to dig into it a bit further. We want to explore creativity in light of God and his kingdom, and we're going to do that in more detail over the coming weeks. But to start us off, I'm here with Deb and Sandro from YWAM. And so perhaps you guys can start by telling us a little bit about yourselves and what you get up to with YWAM.
Thank you, Abby. Hello, everybody.
And hello, my name is Sandro. I'm from Colombia and I'm working in YWAM for more than 25 years in disciple and training youth people in mission and the creativity areas, especially.
Yep, and I've been working in YWAM this time round for 12 years. And I was in YWAM before as well, but and yes, I've done various work with arts in and out of YWAM. And at the moment, one of the things that we're doing here at YWAM Harpenden is to raise up an arts community and training for artists as well.
Wow, that's so exciting. For those of you who are watching who maybe haven't come across the term YWAM, it's Youth with a Mission, and there's more about that online, so feel free to go and have a little bit of a dig into that, as there's loads of exciting things going on there. So yeah, to kind of start off our discussion then, I think the first thing to kind of look at with creativity is the fact that we've been created and we've been created in God's image. And so because we're in God's image, we are going to be creative as well. And so I wonder why, like, if you could maybe share some thoughts on why God might have created us this way. And I guess in light of that, like, why creativity is really important.
Okay, so it's a really good question. Sometimes we just take it for granted. But I think it's good to dig into the Bible and see some things that are explicit in the text and some things that are just more implied in the text as well. So we just obviously go straight back to the beginning, Genesis 1, where it does confirm the first revelation of God as being creative. Do you just want to read that verse?
Yeah, in the beginning, God created the sky and the earth.
Yeah, there it is laid out. So the first aspect that God reveals about himself in the Bible is that he is a creator. And then the next chapter, or a little bit later on in that same chapter, it said he created human beings in his image, as Abby just said. And in the image of God, he created them. And so that would imply that he's made us creative as well. So yeah, we're on the same page about that.
Yeah.
And I guess the importance of it, or the reason why he made us that way, I think, we were talking about this, has got to do with his love. In a similar way that if he hadn't made us creative as he is, we would be kind of like robots. We would be very much boxed in, unable to be creative, and we'll unpack what creativity is in a minute. And so it would make us very much like automatons or machines. Yeah. So yeah, do you want to just expand on the characteristics of creativity? Okay.
Fab. So you mentioned a second ago that you said we're going to touch on like what creativity is in a minute. Do you want to expand a bit on what you were thinking there? Like,
yeah, so in the next chapter of Genesis, in chapter 2, it says that God put Adam first and then Eve later in a garden to cultivate it and to keep it. And those two words, cultivate and keep, don't just have to be applied to gardening or agriculture. They can be applied, they're kind of like big words that apply to developing everything that we see around us, developing, yes, the creation with horticulture, agriculture, gardening, etc., but also developing cities, developing everything that is around us as human society in terms of culture because the end of cultivating something is culture. And so creativity is such an important part of that. And we've written down a whole load of words here, which include
innovation, ideas, inspirations, playfulness, and connecting, about the concepts. It's a lot of areas involving in this creativity.
Also originality, and then communication. So creativity might initially be quite messy and not communicating clearly, but eventually in the process you'll be communicating something. So therefore relationship comes into it, because communication is also about relationship. And then this is like really important as well.
Yeah, it's the capacity of the chose one way or other way, and chose many ideas, many forms of express or doing things.
Yeah, that kind of like process of selecting in creativity. You're doing a lot of decision making about, like Sandra was saying, choosing one thing or another. And so that means we've got freedom to decide a lot of things. So all of creativity encompasses all of those things.
It's amazing, actually, thinking about that, because it's something that we just we throw around the word creativity. I think so many of us have heard those passages before, but it's like seeing it in a new light, really, when it says about cultivating and keeping. I hadn't quite thought about it like that before. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Okay. Yeah, go back and delve into that verse. It's really deep.
It sounds it. Fab. So do you think that that creativity really plays into our connection with God as well? Like, is that something that I guess it's one of those things where we talk about it in light of the things that we can do in the world around us. But for those of us who maybe, there might be some people watching who don't have a relationship with God, but would like to hear a little bit about how creativity can feed into that. So would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Okay, creativity and our relationship with God. Yes, we can. So I'm just looking at my notes here. I think the Holy Spirit, as we were just saying, is just so intrinsically creative. Everything he does. Sometimes we think of God as very kind of like conservative, or even stuffy and kind of quite boring, but he's just so amazingly creative. And so it would kind of make sense that in our relationship with him, in our conversations with him, that there would be a lot of space for creativity. Now, sometimes in the history of God's people, that has been shown a lot more, and sometimes there's been periods of time where it's been kind of like repressed and suppressed more. But interestingly, I think those times have been where human beings in maybe church or religious leadership have kind of like stopped that. But generally speaking, there's been a lot of creativity associated with being in the Christian movement, shall we call it, instead of so I think in terms of being able to express things to God with music, in terms of being able to express things to him maybe in poetry, like in the Psalms, there's a lot of creativity just in those two areas of poetry and music. We can see lots of hymns and music's been created specifically to the glory of God. I think it was Johann Sebastian Bach that would put that on a lot of his music, to the glory of God, and super creative. So
yes, and I think the majority of the person have or raising so many deep questions, especially in these days. And I think the form of doing in this question is when you writing, when you play, when you mix color, when you using your body for movement. It's for different persons, different ways of doing in these questions. There were a mention about the sounds, and David in the sounds in the beginning. is asking questions in the one psalm, for example, and in processing this question, and the final say, oh, but you are God, you are perfect God, or you are the provider. Or it's processing these questions. And the creativity is about the one relation. You asking question and you processing this in writing and all other areas, and you writing the answer, or the small answer, or it's part of the process. And this is the importance of the creativity and relation with God.
Yeah. I've got another example actually we've seen that where we were trying to encourage young people to pray, and we discovered that they are really able to be released into praying for sometimes hours at a time if they're in an atmosphere like in a prayer room, say, where there's a lot of like art on the walls, and they're creating more art, and that is their way of praying. Or they pick up an instrument that they find in the prayer room and they start playing it, maybe for the first time, and they discover that there's that connection, their spirit is crying out, or their soul is crying out, and they can suddenly feel that connection with God because of playing an instrument. So yeah, the creativity in the prayer rooms that we've worked with has been really helpful for people in their relationship with God.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that those points that you made about how people come to that place of asking questions about who they are, who, like, what this world is about, what this life is about, and being able to kind of express that and to use it in praying and asking God questions is really awesome. And I think like in light of that, for those of you who are watching, like I'm really hoping that this series on creativity will help you all to kind of, I guess, just to dwell on it a little bit and to explore how you might use your gifts to connect with God. So yeah, so Deb and Sandro will be back for another video. But in the meantime, keep an eye out for posts, for the reflections. We've got so many people who are going to be sharing about their experiences and their gifts and how they use that in their faith and to glorify God. And so yeah, thanks Deb and Sandro for your wisdom and for being willing to just come and share some thoughts with us, and we'll see you all on the next video.
Thank you very much.
Bye for now.